The slap echoed like a gunshot. Corporal Derek Holloway's palm connected with the back of her head so hard that Petty Officer 3rd Class Eleanor Blackwood stumbled forward, her tray crashing to the floor. Mashed potatoes splattered across government-issue linoleum. Green beans scattered like shrapnel. "Wrong table, Squid!" Holloway snarled his voice, carrying across the suddenly silent mess hall. "Marines only." She was 22 years old, 5'4", 115 pounds soaking wet, dark brown hair pulled back in a regulation bun, steel blue eyes that had seen things most people couldn't imagine. What Holloway didn't see was the thin silver chain tucked beneath her collar, or what hung from it. A Navy SEAL trident, one of fewer than 50 ever awarded to a woman, and beside it, 2 dog tags that didn't belong to her. He had just made the worst mistake of his life. The mess hall at Camp Pendleton held maybe 200 people at capacity. That Thursday afternoon, it held 163. Eleanor Reyes had counted them when she walked in. She always counted. Exits 4. Potential weapons within arm's reach. 11. Threats requiring immediate attention. 0. Until Derek Holloway decided to change that math. She'd been eating alone in the back corner, the way she always did. Grilled chicken that had seen better days. Rice that clumped together like wet cement. Green beans boiled into submission. Standard military fare. She ate with the mechanical efficiency of someone who'd learned that meals were fuel, not pleasure. Someone who'd eaten MREs in a Mogadishu basement while listening to gunfire 3 floors above. Holloway had been watching her for 11 days. She knew this because she'd been watching him watch her. That was what operators did. They cataloged threats before threats became problems. Holloway was 6'2", 220 pounds of gym muscle and unearned confidence. He had a regulation, high and tight straw blonde hair that caught the fluorescent lights and a jaw that looked like it had been chiseled from Marine Corps propaganda posters. His eyes tracked her movements with the kind of predatory focus she'd seen in men who hurt people for sport. He'd started with comments, loud enough for her to hear, quiet enough for plausible deniability. "Check out the Squid. Think she belongs here. Navy sends their females to do a Marine's job. That's why we're losing wars. Bet she's never seen anything more dangerous than a paper cut." Eleanor had ignored all of it. Not because she was afraid, not because she couldn't respond, but because responding meant revealing, and revealing meant questions. And questions meant her carefully constructed cover would collapse like a house of cards in a hurricane. She'd promised herself, no more violence unless lives depended on it. But Holloway wasn't going to let her keep that promise easily. "Hey," his voice cut through the mess hall noise like a blade. "I'm talking to you." Eleanor continued eating. Chewed, swallowed, reached for her water. "You deaf squid." She took a sip, set the glass down, picked up her fork. Holloway's face flushed red. His 2 buddies, Lance Corporals Martinez and Chen, flanked him like backup dancers in a bad music video. They were smirking, waiting for the show. "I said, I heard you." Eleanor's voice was flat, calm, the kind of calm that preceded either complete submission or complete destruction. "I'm choosing not to engage." Martinez snorted. "She's choosing not to engage. You hear that Holloway little Navy princess thinks she's too good for us." "Maybe she needs a reminder?" Chen added, grinning like this was the best entertainment he'd seen all week. Holloway stepped closer, close enough that Eleanor could smell the energy drinks and protein bars on his breath. "This is a Marine base, Marine mess hall, Marine tables. You don't belong here." Eleanor set her fork down, looked up at him, held his gaze for exactly 3 seconds, long enough to make a point, short enough to avoid escalation. "I belong wherever my orders put me." "Corporal, same as you." "Your orders?" He laughed. It wasn't a pleasant sound. "What are your orders exactly? Pushing papers? Filing reports? Making coffee for real warriors?" "Something like that." Eleanor picked her fork back up. Noted. She took another bite of chicken. That was when Holloway snapped. His hand came down hard on the back of her head. Not a punch, but a slap. The kind designed to humiliate rather than injure. The kind fathers give sons when they want to remind them who's in charge. The kind that says, "You're nothing, and I can do whatever I want to you." Eleanor's face slammed toward the table. Her tray went flying. Food scattered across the floor. Her chair scraped back with a shriek of metal on linoleum. The mess hall went silent. 162 people stopped eating, stopped talking, stopped breathing. Eleanor stood slowly, very slowly, the way a coiled spring unwinds before it snaps. There was mashed potato on her Navy working uniform, a smear of gravy on her sleeve, a cut on her lip where it had hit the table edge, Blood bright and red traced a thin line down her chin. She turned to face Holloway, and something in her eyes made him take a half step back. It was involuntary, instinctive, the way prey animals respond to predators. He didn't even realize he'd done it. But Martinez noticed. Chen noticed. Half the mess hall noticed. Eleanor didn't say a word. She just looked at him, through him, into him, like she was calculating exactly how many ways she could end him before anyone could intervene. Like she was deciding whether he was worth the ammunition. Then she reached up and touched the thin silver chain at her throat, tucked it more securely beneath her collar, and walked out. No confrontation, no threats, no tears. Just that look. And the click of her boots on linoleum as 162 people watched her leave. Holloway's laugh broke the silence. Too loud, too forced. "That's right, Squid. Run back to your ship." Martinez high-fived him. Chen grinned. The mess hall slowly returned to its normal rhythm of conversation and silverware. But not everyone was laughing. Staff Sergeant Thomas Briggs had been sitting 3 tables away, eating his lunch and pretending to read a training manual. Briggs was 41 years old, a veteran of 3 combat deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan. He'd spent 18 months attached to a JSOC task force in Ramadi before rotating back to conventional forces. He knew operators when he saw them, the way they moved, the way they sat, the way they processed information, constantly scanning, constantly calculating, constantly ready. The Navy woman Holloway had just assaulted moved like an operator. She sat like an operator, and when she'd looked at Holloway, she'd looked at him like an operator, deciding whether a target was worth the ammunition. Briggs pulled out his phone and sent a text message to an old friend in Naval Special Warfare Command. "Need a favor? Background check on a petty officer 3rd class. Eleanor Blackwood, currently assigned Camp Pendleton. Something doesn't add up." The response came back in 3 minutes. "That file's above your pay grade, Tom. Way above. Stop asking questions." Briggs stared at his phone for a long moment. Then he looked at the door Eleanor had walked through, and he started asking more questions. Eleanor didn't go back to her barracks. She walked to the base gym instead, changed into PT gear, and started hitting the heavy bag. Left jab, right cross, left hook, right uppercut, each strike precise, controlled, devastating. She'd learned to box from her father when she was 8 years old. Master Chief Garrett Blackwood, SEAL Team 3, had believed that every child should know how to defend themselves. He'd taught her stance and footwork in their backyard in Lexington, Massachusetts. Taught her how to slip punches and counterstrike. Taught her that fighting wasn't about anger. It was about calculation. "Anger makes you stupid," he'd said, holding the mitts while she threw combinations until her arms burned. "Stupid gets you killed. You want to survive? Think. Always think." He died thinking. A compound in Afghanistan 2019. His team had been ambushed during an extraction. He'd stayed behind to cover their withdrawal. Took a bullet through the throat. Bled out in the dirt while his teammates escaped with a high-value target. Eleanor had been 16, a junior in high school, planning to study nursing. The day after his funeral, she'd walked into a Navy recruiting office. "I want to be a SEAL," she'd said. The recruiter had laughed. "Ma'am, there's no such thing as a female SEAL. Then I'll be the first." She wasn't the first, but she was among the first. The Navy's experimental gender integration assessment program had started in 2020. Eleanor had been selected in 2021. She'd completed BUDS Class 347 in 2022. One of 3 women to finish out of an initial class of 14. The other 2 had dropped during Hell Week. Eleanor hadn't. Not when they'd held her underwater until her lungs screamed. Not when they'd made her run until her feet bled. Not when instructors had stood over her during surf torture, telling her she didn't belong, telling her to quit, telling her that women couldn't hack it. She'd finished, earned her trident, been assigned to SEAL Team 4. And then Somalia happened. Left jab, right cross, left hook. The heavy bag swung on its chains. Eleanor's knuckles were raw, her arms burned, but she kept hitting. Because if she stopped hitting the bag, she might start hitting something else. The memory came, whether she wanted it or not. Mogadishu, 2024. A compound in the old city where al-Shabaab had taken 14 American contractors hostage. Intelligence said the militants were moving them, 48 hours until they'd be gone. Lost in the Somali interior where extraction would be impossible. Her team had gone in with 80-1 odds, no backup, no extraction guaranteed. Just 6 operators against a compound full of fighters who knew they were coming. They'd held that compound for 36 hours. Marcus Webb had been the first to die. Blonde hair, Texas accent, 28 years old with a wife and baby daughter back in Virginia Beach. He'd taken a round through the throat, covering Eleanor's position during the initial breach. She'd tried to hold his neck together, tried to stop the arterial spray, but there was so much blood. It had covered her hands, her uniform, her face. Ghost. He'd choked, using the call sign their team leader had given her. Get them out. Don't wait for me. He died in 4 minutes. Andre Thompson had lasted longer. Chief Petty Officer, 34 years old, Chicago born and raised. Shrapnel wounds to the abdomen from a grenade that should have killed all of them. He'd held on for hours while they waited for the extraction bird. Eleanor had held his hand for the final 14 minutes. You listening, Ghost? His voice had been weak, fading. I'm here, Chief. You're not done yet. He'd squeezed her hand with what little strength he had left. Not by a long shot. You survive this, you find another way. Not this, not forever, promise me. She'd been sobbing, blood-covered, exhausted beyond measure. I promise, I promise. Thompson had died 90 seconds before the helicopter arrived. They'd gotten all 14 hostages out. Mission success. But 2 of her brothers hadn't come home. That was why Eleanor had requested transfer to training support. Why she'd taken a desk job at a Marine Corps base. Why she'd spent 2 months pretending to be a paper pusher, while Marines like Holloway treated her like a punching bag. Because she'd made a promise. No more violence unless lives depended on it. You're going to break your hands. The voice came from behind her. Female, commanding. Eleanor caught the bag and turned. Colonel Margaret Shaw stood in the gym doorway. She was 54 years old, the base commander and the first woman to hold that position at Camp Pendleton. Silver eagles gleamed on her collar. Her gray hair was pulled back in a regulation bun. Her eyes were the color of gunmetal and twice as hard. Ma'am. Eleanor came to attention. At ease, Petty Officer. Shaw walked closer, studying Eleanor's raw knuckles. I heard what happened in the mess hall. It was nothing, ma'am. A Marine corporal assaulted a Navy petty officer in front of 160 witnesses. That's not nothing. I don't want to make a formal complaint, ma'am. I know you don't. Shaw's voice softened just slightly. I also know why you don't. Eleanor's eyes narrowed. Ma'am, I read your file this morning, Petty Officer Blackwood. Your real file. The one that required 3 phone calls and a direct authorization from the CNO's office. Shaw paused. Let that sink in. Impressive record. Somalia, the hostage extraction. Your team pulled 14 Americans out of an al-Shabaab compound against 80-to-1 odds. Eleanor said nothing. 2 of your teammates didn't make it out. Still nothing. Petty Officer Marcus Webb and Chief Petty Officer Andre Thompson. Shaw's voice was gentle now, almost kind. Webb took around covering your extraction. Thompson bled out from shrapnel wounds before the medevac could arrive. She stepped closer. You held Thompson's hand while he died, told him about your father, promised him you'd find another way. Eleanor's voice cracked. Ma'am, please stop. Shaw stopped. The gym was silent, except for the creak of the heavy bag, still swinging on its chains. Why are you here, Petty Officer? Shaw asked quietly. You could be anywhere, training with your team, running operations, doing the work you trained for. Instead, you requested transfer to training support at a Marine base in California. You took a desk job. You've spent 2 months pretending to be a paper pusher, while Marines like Holloway treat you like a punching bag. She stepped closer. Why? Eleanor's jaw tightened. I made a promise. To who to then Webb and Thompson? To my father. She swallowed hard. I promised that if I survived, I'd find another way. A way that didn't involve... She stopped. Killing people? Shaw finished. Eleanor didn't answer. Didn't need to. Shaw nodded slowly. I understand more than you know. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. But I didn't come here to discuss your past. I came to discuss your future. She handed the paper to Eleanor. Joint Readiness Assessment. 3-day field evaluation. Marines and Navy personnel together. Physical endurance. Tactical problem solving. Leadership under stress. Results go in permanent service records. Shaw's eyes locked onto Eleanor's. I'm requiring Corporal Holloway's squad to participate, and I'm specifically requesting that you participate as well. Not as an evaluator, as a competitor. Eleanor unfolded the paper, read it, looked up. Ma'am, with respect, if I compete in this assessment, people will figure out that I'm not a desk sailor. Shaw's smile was thin and sharp. Good, maybe it's time they learned. I came here to disappear, ma'am, not to... You came here to hide, petty officer? There's a difference. Shaw's voice hardened. Hiding doesn't honor the men who died for you. Hiding doesn't honor your father. And hiding doesn't help the next generation of women who want to follow in your footsteps. Eleanor flinched, like she'd been slapped. You have skills that 99% of military personnel will never possess, Shaw continued. Skills earned through sacrifice, pain, and the deaths of people you loved. You can waste those skills pushing papers and getting slapped by insecure corporals. Or you can use them to show every person on this base what a real warrior looks like. She turned toward the door. Assessment starts Monday. 0600. I expect to see you there. She was gone before Eleanor could respond. Eleanor didn't sleep that night. She lay on her rack in the nearly empty barracks, staring at water-stained ceiling tiles, running calculations she didn't want to run. If she participated in the assessment and performed to her actual capabilities, her cover would be blown. Questions would be asked. Her file would be pulled. People would know what she was. If she didn't participate, she'd be disobeying a direct order from a full-bird colonel. And if she participated but deliberately underperformed, held back, pretended to struggle, let Holloway win, she'd be betraying everything her father had taught her about honor. Never lie about what you are, Elle, Garrett Blackwood had said. Even when it's easier, even when it hurts, you stand up and you show them who you are. Or you die a coward. He'd lived those words, died living them. Eleanor reached under her pillow and pulled out the chain she'd worn since Somalia. The trident hung heavy and cold against her palm. Beside it, 2 dog tags clinked together. Webb Marcus A. Thompson, Andre K. She'd carried them for 14 months. Every day, every night, a reminder of what she'd survived, what she'd lost, what she'd promised. I don't know what to do, she whispered to the darkness. I came here to stop, to be normal, to find peace, but the darkness didn't answer. But somewhere in her memory, Marcus Webb's voice did. Peace isn't the absence of fighting ghost. Peace is knowing what you're fighting for. She closed her eyes. Monday was coming. Derek Holloway spent the weekend lifting weights and talking trash. You see the look on her face? He crowed to Martinez and Chen at the base gym. Thought she was going to cry. Pathetic. You think she'll report it? Martinez asked, spotting Holloway on the bench press. No chance. Types like her never do. Too scared of making waves. Holloway loaded another plate onto the bar. Besides, what's she going to say? Big mean Marine hurt my feelings. She'd be laughed off base. I heard Colonel Shaw is making us do that field assessment, Chen said. 3 days in the bush, full combat load. Good, Holloway grinned. I'll crush it. Probably end up on the commandant's list for promotion. I heard the Navy squids are participating too, Martinez added. Holloway's grin widened. Even better. I'll crush her too. Show everyone what happens when you put females in warrior billets. He didn't notice Staff Sergeant Briggs watching from across the gym, and he didn't notice the text message Briggs was sending. Contact made with NSWOC. File confirmed. You're not going to believe what's in it. Recommend you attend Monday's assessment. Front row seat to the show of a lifetime. Eleanor arrived at the assessment staging area at 0545 Monday morning. 40 participants had volunteered. 38 Marines, 2 Navy personnel, Eleanor, and a hospital corpsman named Rodriguez, who looked about 12 years old and had clearly never seen anything more strenuous than a morning jog. Holloway was already there stretching with Martinez and Chen. He saw Eleanor and smirked. Well, well. Squid decided to play with the big boys. Eleanor didn't respond. She was too busy cataloging the terrain, the equipment, the evaluators setting up their clipboards. 3 days. 72 hours. Physical and tactical assessments that would push everyone to their breaking point. She'd done this before. In Somalia. 72 hours defending a compound against overwhelming forces with no extraction coming. This was nothing, but it was also everything. Because this time, she wasn't fighting to survive. She was fighting to remember who she was. Colonel Shaw appeared at exactly 0600. Behind her stood a man Eleanor recognized immediately. Master Gunnery Sergeant Raymond Garrett, 52 years old, 3 silver stars, one of the most decorated close-quarters combat instructors in the Marine Corps. He'd trained raiders and special operations personnel for 20 years. He'd also trained with SEAL teams during joint exercises, which meant he knew exactly what to look for. Shaw explained the assessment rules. 3 phases: physical endurance, tactical problem solving, combat casualty care under stress. Results would be recorded. Performance would be evaluated. And at the end, those who excelled would be recommended for advanced training opportunities. This isn't a competition, Shaw said, her voice carrying across the assembled group. This is a revelation. By the end of these 3 days, you'll know exactly what you're made of, and so will everyone else. Her eyes found Eleanor in the crowd, held them for exactly 2 seconds. Then she turned and walked away. Master Gunnery Sergeant Garrett stepped forward. First evolution begins in 10 minutes. 15-mile tactical movement, full combat load, simulated casualty scenarios throughout. Anyone who falls out gets documented. Anyone who quits goes home. His eyes swept across the group. Any questions? Silence. Then gear up. Clock starts at 0630. Eleanor pulled on her pack. 65 pounds of equipment water and simulated ammunition. Standard load. She'd carried heavier in Somalia. Carried wounded teammates on top of it. Holloway shouldered his own pack, grunting slightly at the weight. Hope you can keep up, Squid, he said as he passed. Eleanor didn't answer. She just started walking, and she didn't stop. By mile 8, 12 participants had dropped out. Holloway was still moving, but his form had deteriorated. Shoulders hunched, steps shortened, breathing ragged and uncontrolled. Eleanor hadn't altered her pace once. She moved with the machine-like efficiency her father had drilled into her, 1 foot in front of the other. Breathe in for 4 steps, out for 4 steps. Ignore the pain, ignore the fatigue, ignore everything except the next checkpoint. Mile 10 brought the first simulated casualty scenario. A mannequin rigged with fake blood lay across the trail. Evaluators with clipboards watched from the trees. Most participants stopped, assessed the casualty, attempted basic treatment. Holloway knelt beside it, breathing hard, and tried to apply a tourniquet. His hands were shaking. He fumbled the windlass, dropped it in the dirt. Time, Garrett called. Casualty bled out, moved to secondary care position. Holloway's face twisted with frustration. Eleanor approached the second mannequin 30 meters ahead. This one had multiple wounds, simulated gunshot to the chest, shrapnel injuries to the legs. She knelt, assessed, prioritized. Chest seal first, then tourniquets, then secondary wounds. Her hands moved with surgical precision. No wasted motion, no hesitation. Time, Garrett called. Casualty stabilized. Excellent triage protocol. He made a note on his clipboard. Holloway watched from behind, his face unreadable. Mile 12, mile 14, mile 15. When they crossed the finish line, only 19 of the original 40 were still standing. Holloway was one of them. Barely. Eleanor looked like she could run another 15 miles without breaking a sweat. Garrett marked something on his clipboard, walked over to Eleanor. Petty Officer Blackwood. Master Guns. That's a hell of a pace you kept. Just putting 1 foot in front of the other Master Guns. He studied her for a long moment. His eyes dropped to her left forearm, where faded scars crossed her knuckles. Those from training? Some of them. And the others? Eleanor held his gaze. From places that don't have names on maps. Garrett nodded slowly. Get some water. Phase 2 starts in 2 hours. He walked away, but Eleanor could feel his attention on her for the rest of the day, and she knew that whatever she'd been hiding was about to become very, very public. That night, around the assessment camp's small fire, the survivors compared notes. 15 miles with that load? Martinez groaned, examining his blistered feet. I feel like I've been hit by a truck. Shut up, Holloway snapped. You made it. That's what matters. Did you see the squid, though? Chen asked quietly. She barely broke a sweat. Holloway's jaw tightened. Desk sailors do cardio. Doesn't mean anything. Wait until the tactical evolution. That's where real Marines separate from pretenders. Eleanor sat 20 meters away, eating an MRE in silence. She could hear every word they said, just like she could hear the conversation happening on the other side of camp, where Staff Sergeant Briggs was talking quietly to Master Gunnery Sergeant Garrett. Confirmed by Naval Special Warfare Command, Briggs said, his voice low, but carrying in the still night air. She's the real deal. One of the first women to complete Bud S, earned her trident at 20, deployed to Somalia with Team 4. Jesus. Garrett's voice held something Eleanor hadn't heard from him before. Respect. The hostage extraction. 14 Americans pulled out, 80-1 odds. She lost 2 teammates but got everyone else home. And she's here doing training support work. Requested transfer after Somalia. Word is, she's got survivor's guilt, like a freight train. The 2 operators who died were covering her extraction. Silence fell between them. Does Shaw know? Garrett asked. Shaw ordered me to pull the file. She's the one who put Blackwood in this assessment. Why? Because that Marine corporal has been harassing her for weeks. Shaw wants to make a point. Garrett let out a low whistle. Hell of a point. Eleanor finished her MRE, packed away her trash, and waited for dawn. Dawn came cold and gray, and Eleanor was already awake when the first light touched the camp. She hadn't slept more than 40 minutes total, not because of discomfort. She'd slept in worse conditions in Somalia. in crawl spaces and drainage pipes and bombed-out buildings. She hadn't slept because every time she closed her eyes, she saw Marcus Webb's face, heard his voice, felt his blood on her hands as she tried to hold his insides together while the compound burned around them. "You awake, Squid?" Holloway's voice cut through the pre-dawn silence. He was standing 10 feet away, stretching his shoulders, watching her with that predatory focus she'd cataloged the first day she'd seen him. "I'm awake." "Good." He stepped closer. "Because today's the tactical evolution. Real warrior stuff. Not the jogging we did yesterday." Eleanor said nothing, just continued packing her gear. "You know what I think?" Holloway crouched down to her level. "I think yesterday was a fluke. I think you trained for that specific test. Cardio queens can do that. But tactics, decision-making under pressure, that's where real operators separate from pretenders. You might be right." Her agreement caught him off guard. He'd expected resistance, defiance, something he could use to justify his contempt. "I might be what?" Eleanor zipped her pack closed. "Right. Guess we'll find out." She stood and walked toward the assembly point, leaving Holloway crouched in the dirt with his mouth half open. Master Gunnery Sergeant Garrett called the remaining 19 participants to formation at 0600. His voice was hoarse from a night of too little sleep and too much coffee, but his eyes were sharp as scalpels. "Today's evolution is tactical problem solving. You'll be divided into 2 teams. Each team will be given a building clearance scenario with limited intelligence and hostile role players. Your job is to plan, execute, and adapt. Evaluators will document everything. Performance today counts triple what you did yesterday." Martinez raised his hand. "Who picks the teams, Master Guns?" "I do." Garrett consulted his clipboard. Team 1, Corporal Holloway is team leader, Martinez, Chen, Rodriguez, Patterson, and Kowalski. Holloway straightened visibly. Team leader. This was his chance to prove himself. Team 2, Petty Officer Blackwood is team leader. The words hit the assembly like a mortar round. Holloway's head snapped toward Garrett. "Master Guns, with respect, she's Navy. She shouldn't be leading Marines in a tactical exercise." Garrett's voice could have frozen jet fuel. "With respect, Corporal, I didn't ask for your opinion. Petty Officer Blackwood's personnel file indicates instructor-level qualifications in small unit tactics from previous joint training assignments. She's qualified. You're not in a position to question my decisions." He paused, let the silence stretch. "Did I stutter, Corporal?" Holloway's jaw clenched. "No, Master Guns." "Then shut your mouth and listen." Garrett finished reading the team assignments. Eleanor got Staff Sergeant Briggs, Sergeant Williams, and 4 Lance Corporals, whose names she'd memorized the day before, but who'd barely spoken to her since the assessment began. Briggs caught her eye as he joined her team. Gave her a small nod that said, "I know what you are, and I'm here to help." Eleanor nodded back. The first scenario was straightforward. A 2-story structure with 6 rooms, 3 hostile role players, 1 hostage. Standard stuff. The kind of problem they taught at every combat training center in the country. Holloway's team went first. They approached like they were filming an action movie. Holloway kicked in the front door without checking the windows. Martinez and Chen flooded in behind him, weapons sweeping wildly. Patterson tripped over the door threshold and accidentally discharged his blank-loaded rifle into the ceiling. "Contact front!" Holloway screamed, firing at the first role player he saw. It was the hostage. "Cease fire!" Garrett's voice boomed through the building. "Cease fire! Hostage is dead. Team 1 has failed this scenario." Holloway's face went purple. "That's not fair." The hostage wasn't where the intelligence said, "Intelligence is never perfect in the real world, Corporal. That's why we have something called positive identification before we shoot." Garrett made a note on his clipboard. Team 1 scenario failed. 1 friendly casualty. Mission compromised. Holloway looked like he wanted to punch someone. His eyes found Eleanor standing with her team outside the building, and the rage in them was pure and hot and dangerous. "Team 2, Garrett called. "You're up. Same building, different configuration, different role player positions. You have 5 minutes to plan." Eleanor gathered her team in a tight circle. She pulled a stick from the ground and drew the building layout in the dirt. Marked entry points. Marked angles of fire. Marked dead zones where hostages might be held. Standard 4-man stack on the primary entrance. Briggs, your point. Williams, your 2. I'm 3. Patterson, your rear security. The rest of you hold the perimeter and watch the windows. "What about hostile identification?" Briggs asked. "We clear each room systematically. No one shoots until we have positive ID on hostile intent. Weapons raised, aggressive posture, direct threat to the team. Anything less, we challenge verbally first. And the hostage? Hostages are usually held in interior rooms. Limited exits, easy to control. We work outside in. Clear the perimeter rooms first, then move to the center. Sergeant Williams, a Marine with 10 years of service, raised an eyebrow. You've done this before? Once or twice. Briggs almost smiled. Any questions? Eleanor asked. Silence. Then stack up. What happened next took 4 minutes and 37 seconds. Eleanor's team moved through the building like water through pipes, smooth, silent, coordinated. Each room was cleared with textbook precision. Slice the pie. Check the corners. Communicate with hand signals. Move to the next objective. They found the first role player in room 2. He was holding a weapon. Drop it, Briggs commanded. The role player complied. Secured without a shot fired. Second role player in room 4. Same result. Third role player was in the back bedroom with the hostage. He had a simulated knife to the hostage's throat. Most teams would have hesitated, waited for negotiation, called for backup. Eleanor didn't hesitate. She stepped into the doorway, weapon raised, and said one word. Release. The role player, a Marine staff sergeant named Torres, who'd played bad guys in 100 training exercises, looked into her eyes and saw something that made his grip on the knife falter. Not fear, not aggression, certainty. The kind of certainty that came from having done this in real life. From having actually pulled triggers. From having actually saved hostages. From having actually killed men who needed killing. Torres released the hostage. Building clear, Briggs shouted. Garrett checked his stopwatch. Checked his clipboard. Checked again. Team 2 scenario complete. 0 casualties. All hostiles neutralized. Hostage secured. He looked up at Eleanor. That's the fastest clear time I've seen in 15 years of running this exercise. Holloway stood at the building entrance watching. His hands were shaking. Eleanor walked past him without a word, but she didn't need words. The results spoke for themselves. The second tactical scenario was more complex. A 3-building compound with multiple entry points, overlapping fields of fire, and limited intelligence, suggesting hostiles in unknown positions. Holloway demanded a chance to redeem his team. Garrett allowed it. This time Holloway actually tried to plan. Drew diagrams, assigned positions, briefed his team on contingencies. But planning and execution were different things. When the scenario started, Holloway's team moved well for the first 30 seconds. Then Chen took a wrong turn and walked directly into a role player's line of fire. Simulated casualty. Then Martinez panicked and abandoned his position to help Chen, leaving Holloway's flank exposed. Another simulated casualty. Holloway tried to adapt, tried to adjust. But he was thinking like someone who'd learned tactics from manuals, not from experience. He was thinking like someone who'd never actually been shot at. Scenario failed, Garrett announced. 2 friendly casualties. Mission compromised. Holloway's team limped out of the compound looking like they'd just survived a car wreck. Eleanor's team went next. Same compound, same variables, same pressure. This time, Eleanor changed the approach entirely. We're not going in the front, she said during the planning phase. Why not? Patterson asked. Because that's what they expect. Front entrances are kill zones. Anyone defending this compound will have their heaviest coverage on the obvious approaches. She drew a new diagram in the dirt. Briggs, you take Williams and Patterson through the service entrance on the east side. Low and quiet. I'll take the rest through the roof access on building 2. The roof? Rodriguez, the young corpsman, looked nervous. Is that even possible? There's a maintenance hatch, standard on these training structures. Most people forget it's there. Eleanor met his eyes. Trust me. Rodriguez swallowed, nodded. The scenario started. Briggs's element moved through the east entrance like ghosts. Silent. Professional. They cleared the first building in 2 minutes flat. Eleanor's element went through the roof. She'd been right about the maintenance hatch. It opened directly into a utility corridor that bypassed the main defensive positions entirely. Her team moved through the building's interior, neutralizing hostiles from angles they never expected. When the 2 elements linked up in the central courtyard, they'd cleared the entire compound without a single simulated casualty. Garrett stared at his stopwatch. 3 minutes, 41 seconds. New course record. Staff Sergeant Briggs looked at Eleanor with something approaching awe. Where the hell did you learn to do that? Eleanor touched the chain at her throat, felt the weight of the trident beneath her uniform. Somewhere that doesn't exist. The afternoon brought the evolution everyone had been dreading. Combat casualty care, under stress. Multiple simulated casualties, limited supplies. Active hostile fire, using blank ammunition, and pyrotechnics designed to create confusion and panic. This was where most people broke. Eleanor had done this for real. Had treated actual wounds under actual fire. Had watched men die because help came 30 seconds too late. She wasn't going to let that happen here. Not even in simulation. The scenario started with an explosion, a pyrotechnic charge designed to disorient. Then blank ammunition began cracking from 3 directions. Then the screaming started. Casualties. Multiple casualties. Most participants froze. Some panicked. Some forgot everything they'd ever learned about tactical combat casualty care. Holloway was kneeling beside a mannequin with simulated arterial bleeding. His hands were shaking so badly he couldn't grip the tourniquet. "Come on," he muttered. "Come on, come on. You're doing it wrong." Eleanor appeared beside him, calm, focused. Her voice cut through the chaos like a blade through smoke. "The tourniquet goes 2 inches above the wound, not on it. You're trying to occlude the artery, feeding the injury, not the injury itself. I know that." "Then do it." Holloway's hands kept shaking. He dropped the tourniquet. Cursed. Picked it up. Dropped it again. Eleanor reached past him and took the tourniquet from his hands. "Watch." She applied it in 3 seconds. Perfect placement, perfect tension. The simulated bleeding stopped. "Now the chest seal." She pointed to another mannequin nearby. "That one has a penetrating chest wound. Do you know the procedure?" Yes, I think." "Don't think. No. Walk me through it." Holloway's brain scrambled for the training he'd received months ago. "Identify the wound. Clean the area. Apply the seal during exhalation." "During exhalation? Why?" Because you want to prevent air from entering the chest cavity. If you apply during inhalation, you trap air inside, which can cause tension pneumothorax, which will kill your casualty faster than the original wound." Eleanor nodded. "Good. Now go apply it. I'll handle the other casualties." She was gone before he could respond. For the next 12 minutes, Eleanor moved through the scenario like a surgeon in an emergency room, triaging casualties, directing treatment, correcting errors before they became fatal. She saved every single mannequin. When the scenario ended, Garrett gathered the participants for a debrief. "That was the most chaotic CCC exercise I've seen in 5 years," he said. "Half of you forgot basic protocols. A quarter of you froze completely, and a few of you," his eyes found Eleanor, "performed like you've done this under actual combat conditions." Holloway stood at the back of the group staring at the ground. He'd watched Eleanor work, watched her move, watched her hands steady, precise, unhesitating do things that his hands couldn't do. And for the first time since the assessment began, he started to wonder if maybe he'd been wrong about her. That night, around the assessment camp's fire, the dynamic had shifted. Marines, who'd ignored Eleanor before, now sat closer to her, asked questions, listened when she spoke. "Where'd you learn all that?" Patterson asked. "The building clearance stuff, the medical stuff." "I've been in 3 years, and I've never seen anyone move like you." "Training," Eleanor said. "That wasn't just training." Patterson struggled for words. That was operator-level stuff, Marine Raiders, that kind of thing. I've worked with people who do that kind of thing." "Worked with them? How?" Eleanor poked at the fire with a stick. "In places where mistakes got people killed." Silence fell over the group. Briggs cleared his throat. "Petty Officer Blackwood, if you don't mind my asking, what's your actual MOS? Your actual job?" "Cryptologic technician. Signals intelligence." "Signals intelligence?" Briggs paused. "People don't move like you move." "Some do. Name one." Eleanor looked up from the fire, met Briggs's eyes directly. "I can't." The words hung in the air like smoke. Briggs nodded slowly. Message received. Across the fire, Holloway sat alone watching the exchange. His face was unreadable, but his hands were clenched into fists at his sides. Something was building behind his eyes. Something that might have been anger or shame or something far more dangerous. Eleanor noticed, cataloged it, filed it away. Tomorrow was day 3, the final evolution. Whatever Holloway was planning, it would happen then. The next morning started wrong. Eleanor woke to find her pack had been moved. Nothing was missing. She'd checked immediately, but someone had gone through her gear while she slept, looking for something. She knew who, and she knew why. Holloway wanted to find evidence of who she really was, wanted to expose her as a fraud or confirm her as a threat. Either way, he wanted ammunition. He hadn't found any. The trident and the dog tags never left her neck. But the violation was clear. Personal, deliberate. Final evolution begins in 30 minutes, Garrett announced at morning formation. 24-hour patrol-based defense. You'll establish a defensive position, maintain security rotations, and respond to simulated attacks throughout the day and night. Anyone who breaks protocol gets documented. Anyone who falls asleep on watch gets documented. Anyone who fails to maintain unit cohesion gets documented. He paused. And at the end, there will be a hand-to-hand combat assessment, one-on-one, full contact. Evaluators will match participants based on weight class and experience level. Eleanor felt the weight of Holloway's stare without turning her head. This was what he'd been waiting for. Not tactics, not endurance, not medical skills, violence. The one arena where he believed he still held the advantage. The patrol-based defense started at 0800. For the first 6 hours, everything ran smoothly. Eleanor's team established overlapping fields of fire, maintained strict noise discipline, and rotated security positions with clockwork precision. Holloway's team struggled. By hour 8, Martinez had fallen asleep on watch. Chen had wandered out of position to urinate and nearly gotten killed by a simulated attack, and Holloway himself was making tactical errors, putting sentries in exposed positions, failing to account for dead space, ignoring basic counter-surveillance protocols. Briggs watched from across the defensive perimeter, occasionally catching Eleanor's eye with a raised eyebrow that said, "Are you seeing this?" She was seeing it. But she was also seeing something else. Holloway wasn't just failing. He was deteriorating. Hour by hour, his judgment was getting worse. His temper was getting shorter. His focus was fragmenting into something chaotic and unpredictable. By hour 12, he looked like a man coming apart at the seams. "Corporal Holloway." Garrett's voice cut through the afternoon heat. "You've got 2 men out of position, and a gap in your defensive coverage wide enough to drive a tank through. Fix it." "Yes, Master Guns." Holloway tried to fix it. Made it worse. "Corporal Holloway, your sentry rotation just left your command post completely undefended for 4 minutes. In a real scenario, you'd be dead." "Yes, Master Guns." He tried again. Failed again. By hour 18, Holloway wasn't just making mistakes. He was making catastrophic errors that would have resulted in his entire team's deaths in actual combat. Eleanor watched it happen and felt something she hadn't expected. Pity, not sympathy, not forgiveness. Just the cold recognition that Holloway was what her father would have called all hat and no cattle. A man who'd built his entire identity on being a warrior without ever actually becoming one. And now that identity was crumbling in front of everyone. Hour 20, hour 22. By hour 23, most participants were running on fumes. Sleep deprivation combined with stress created a fog that clouded judgment and slowed reactions. Eleanor was tired, but focused. She'd done this before, done it longer, done it with actual enemies trying to kill her. Holloway was a wreck. His eyes were bloodshot. His hands trembled. His voice cracked when he gave orders. And when Garrett announced that the hand-to-hand combat assessment would begin in 1 hour, something in Holloway's face changed, shifted, hardened into something ugly and desperate and dangerous. "Match assignments," Garrett read from his clipboard. "Patterson versus Williams, Martinez versus Chen, Rodriguez versus Kowalski." He paused. "And Holloway versus Blackwood." Eleanor felt the air change, felt the attention of every remaining participant focus on her. Holloway smiled. It wasn't a pleasant smile. It was the smile of a man who'd finally found a way to salvage his pride. "Finally," he said. "Finally, we get to see what the little squid is really made of." Combat assessment mat had been laid out in a clearing near the camp's center. 20 feet by 20 feet of padded surface that would absorb falls, but not eliminate pain. Evaluators stood at each corner with clipboards and stopwatches. The remaining participants formed a loose circle around the perimeter, exhausted but alert, sensing that something significant was about to happen. Eleanor approached the mat slowly, rolling her shoulders, loosening her joints. She'd removed her blouse and wore only her brown undershirt, dog tags tucked inside, the thin silver chain barely visible against her collarbone. Her body was lean and functional, not bulky with gym muscle like Holloway's, but wired with the kind of strength that came from actual use. Holloway was already on the mat, bouncing on his toes like a boxer before a title fight. He'd stripped down to his undershirt too. His arms were thick, with veins pumped from 3 days of physical exertion and a lifetime of weights. "Rules are simple," Garrett announced. "Standard combatives. Strikes, grappling, submissions. Match ends on tap-out, knockout, or evaluator stoppage. No eye gouges, no groin strikes, no strikes to the throat." He paused. "Questions?" "Yeah," Holloway said, still bouncing. "Does she get a handicap for being a girl?" Scattered nervous laughter from the crowd. Eleanor didn't react. "No handicaps," Garrett said flatly. "Step to center." They met in the middle of the mat. Holloway had 6 inches and nearly 100 pounds on her. He looked down at Eleanor like a wolf sizing up a rabbit. "Last chance to tap out squid," he said quietly, too low for the evaluators to hear. "No shame in admitting you're outmatched." Eleanor looked up at him. Her eyes were calm, empty. the eyes of someone who'd faced far worse than a Marine corporal with an ego problem. "Begin," Garrett called. Holloway lunged. He was fast for his size. Eleanor gave him that. His right hand came in hard, a haymaker designed to end the fight before it started, the kind of punch that worked in bar brawls and gym showdowns against people who didn't know how to move. Eleanor wasn't one of those people. She slipped left, let his fist sail past her ear by less than an inch. Her hand came up, not to strike, to guide. She redirected his momentum, used his own force against him. And suddenly, Holloway was stumbling past her, off balance, exposed. She could have ended it there, could have applied any of a dozen techniques that would have put him on the ground with a joint lock or a choke. Instead, she stepped back, reset, waited. Holloway spun around, face flushed with embarrassment and rage. "Lucky," he spat. He came again, this time smarter. A jab-cross combination followed by a level change for a takedown attempt. Textbook Marine Corps combatives. Eleanor sprawled on the takedown, her hips dropped low, her hands pushed down on Holloway's shoulders. He couldn't complete the shot. She spun out of his grip and created distance again. Still didn't counterattack. "Fight back," Holloway shouted. "Stop running." "I'm not running." "Then hit me." Eleanor tilted her head slightly. "Why?" The question seemed to short-circuit something in Holloway's brain. He'd expected resistance, expected aggression, expected a fight he could win through superior strength and weight. What he got was a woman who moved like water and refused to engage on his terms. "Because that's what this is," he said through gritted teeth. "A fight."
Or are you too scared? I'm not scared of you, Corporal. Then prove it. Eleanor's jaw tightened, almost imperceptibly. You don't want me to prove it? Yeah, I do. No. Her voice dropped. You really don't. Holloway charged. This time, he committed everything. Full speed, full power, arms wide for a body lock that would take her to the ground and let his weight do the work. It was the move of a man who'd stopped thinking and started reacting. Eleanor didn't run. She stepped into his charge. What happened next took less than 2 seconds, but everyone watching would remember it for the rest of their lives.
Eleanor's hands found Holloway's wrist and elbow. She pivoted, dropped her center of gravity, and used his momentum to execute a textbook hip throw that sent 220 pounds of Marine Corporal sailing through the air like a rag doll. Holloway hit the mat hard. The impact drove the air from his lungs. Before he could recover, Eleanor was on him. Her legs wrapped around his torso. Her arms snaked around his neck. A rear naked choke, perfectly applied, perfectly controlled. Holloway thrashed, bucked, tried to pry her arms away. Her grip didn't budge. "Tap," Eleanor said quietly, her mouth close to his ear. "It's over. Just tap." "Go to hell," Holloway gasped. He kept fighting. His face went red, then purple. His movements became sluggish, uncoordinated. "Tap," Eleanor repeated. "I don't want to put you to sleep, but I will. I'm not tapping to a—" He couldn't finish the sentence. His hand came up, slapped the mat twice. Eleanor released immediately, rolled away, stood up in one fluid motion. Holloway lay on the mat, gasping for air, staring at the sky with an expression that mixed shock and humiliation, and something else, something that might have been the beginning of understanding. Garrett marked his clipboard. "Match by submission. Time 47 seconds. The crowd was silent. Briggs let out a low whistle. 47 seconds. That's impossible. Holloway's got 100 pounds on her, Martinez muttered. How did she? She's not what she seems, Briggs said quietly. None of us knew, but we're about to find out. Eleanor walked to the edge of the mat. She wasn't breathing hard, wasn't sweating, wasn't showing any sign that she'd just submitted a man nearly twice her weight in less than a minute. She reached for her canteen. That was when Holloway attacked. He came up from the mat like something possessed. No warning, no announcement, just pure, unfiltered rage propelling him toward the woman who'd humiliated him in front of everyone. "Eleanor!" Briggs shouted. She turned. Too late. Holloway's shoulder hit her in the midsection like a battering ram. The impact drove her backward, off the mat, onto the hard-packed dirt. Her canteen went flying. Her body hit the ground with a sound that made everyone wince. Holloway was on top of her instantly, pinning her down with his weight, his hands going for her throat. "Think you're better than me?" he screamed. "Think you can just—" Eleanor's training kicked in. Not the restrained, controlled techniques she'd used on the mat. Something older, something she'd learned in places where hesitation meant death. Her palm shot upward, caught Holloway under the chin. His head snapped back. Before he could recover, her hips bucked violently. Created space. Her legs wrapped around his arm. She twisted. Holloway screamed. She had him in an armbar. The kind of armbar that separated shoulders from sockets if you didn't tap immediately. Stop! Garrett shouted, running toward them. Both of you stop! Eleanor didn't stop. She couldn't. Her body was operating on autopilot now. Years of combat training overriding conscious thought. She torqued the armbar harder. Holloway screamed again. And then the chain snapped. The thin, silver chain she'd worn since Somalia. The one that held her trident and the dog tags of her fallen teammates. It broke under the violence of the struggle. The chain slid off her neck. The contents spilled onto the dirt. A Navy SEAL trident badge landed 3 inches from Holloway's face. 2 dog tags landed beside it. Time stopped. Holloway stared at the trident. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. That's not... His voice was hoarse, broken. That's not possible. Eleanor released the armbar, rolled away, grabbed the chain, the badge, the dog tags, but it was too late. Everyone had seen. Holy Mother of God, Martinez whispered. Briggs stepped forward slowly, his eyes fixed on what Eleanor was clutching to her chest. Petty Officer Blackwood. His voice was quiet, controlled, but there was something underneath it. Something like awe. Is that what I think it is? Eleanor didn't answer. Her hands were shaking. The first sign of weakness she'd shown in 3 days. She was trying to refasten the chain, but her fingers wouldn't cooperate. Answer the question, Petty Officer, Garrett said. His voice was quiet too, but there was no mistaking the command in it. Is that a trident? Yes. The single word fell like a bomb. That's impossible, Holloway said. He was still on the ground, cradling his arm, but his eyes were locked on Eleanor. Women can't be SEALs. It's not allowed. There's no such thing as a female. There is now, Briggs said. He'd moved closer to Eleanor, positioned himself between her and Holloway like a protective barrier. The integration program. I read about it. Started in 2020. First female candidates graduated Bud S. in 2022. 3 of them, Eleanor said quietly. She'd given up on the chain and was holding the trident in her closed fist. 3 women finished. I was one of them. The silence that followed was absolute. Garrett broke it first. What team? Eleanor hesitated, looked at the dog tags in her other hand. 4. Deployment, Somalia 2024. Garrett's face changed. The hostage extraction. 14 Americans from the Al-Shabaab compound. Yes. Christ. Garrett ran a hand through his hair. That was your team. That was my team. Martinez had gone pale. I heard about that mission. Everyone heard about it. 80 to 1 odds. The team held the compound for 36 hours. Eleanor's voice was flat, distant, like she was reciting facts about someone else's life. We held for 36 hours until extraction could reach us. We lost 2 operators, Petty Officer Marcus Webb and Chief Petty Officer Andre Thompson. She held up the dog tags. I carry them every day, so I don't forget what they died for. Holloway had managed to sit up. He was staring at Eleanor like he'd never seen her before, like everything he thought he knew had been torn apart and rearranged into something unrecognizable. You're a SEAL, he said. An actual SEAL. Yes. And I... He stopped, swallowed. In the mess hall, I hit a SEAL. You hit a woman eating lunch, Eleanor corrected. You didn't know what I was. You just knew I was smaller than you. Female. Alone. You thought that made me a target. I didn't know. That's the point, Corporal. Eleanor's voice hardened. You didn't know. You didn't care. You saw someone you thought was weak, and you decided to prove how strong you were by hurting them. She stepped closer to him. That's not strength. That's cowardice. Holloway flinched like she'd hit him. I could have killed you in the mess hall, Eleanor continued. Could have ended you before you even understood what was happening. Do you know why I didn't? He shook his head. Because I made a promise. She looked at the dog tags again. To them, to my father, to myself. I promised that if I survived, I'd find another way. A way that didn't involve hurting people, unless lives depended on it. Your father, Master Chief Garrett Blackwood, SEAL Team 3. He died in Afghanistan when I was 16, covering his team's extraction. Eleanor's jaw tightened. He taught me that the only respect worth having is the kind you earn when no one's watching. She paused. I spent 3 days watching you, Corporal. I know exactly what kind of respect you've earned. The words hit Holloway harder than any punch. He looked away, couldn't meet her eyes. The crowd had grown. Word had spread through the camp faster than wildfire. Marines and sailors who'd been resting in their tents were now gathered around the clearing, staring at the small Navy woman holding a trident badge like it was the most natural thing in the world. Colonel Shaw pushed through the crowd. She'd clearly been summoned from the command post. Her uniform was slightly disheveled, her hair escaping its regulation bun. But her eyes were sharp as she took in the scene. Holloway on the ground, Eleanor standing over him, the trident visible in her hand. Well, Shaw said quietly, I suppose the secret's out. You knew, Martinez asked, his voice cracking with disbelief. Ma'am, you knew what she was. I knew. Shaw moved to stand beside Eleanor. I've known since she arrived. Her real file, requires special clearance to access. I accessed it 3 weeks ago when I started hearing reports about certain Marines harassing a Navy petty officer. Her eyes found Holloway. I decided that instead of simply punishing the behavior, I'd create an opportunity for everyone to learn something, including you, Corporal. Learn what? Holloway asked. His voice was barely above a whisper. That strength isn't about size or volume or intimidation. It's about what you do when you have power over someone else. Shaw looked at Eleanor. Petty Officer Blackwood had the power to destroy you multiple times. In the mess hall, on the combat mat, just now when you attacked her from behind. Each time she chose restraint. Holloway was looking at Eleanor now. Really looking. Why would you let me do all those things to you when you could have stopped me? Eleanor was quiet for a moment. Then she crouched down so she was at eye level with him. Because I've been where you are, Corporal. Not the same situation, but the same feeling. Desperate to prove yourself. Terrified that you're not good enough. Building your identity on being the strongest, the toughest, the most dangerous person in the room. She paused. And then you meet someone who shows you that everything you thought you knew was wrong. What did you do when that happened to you? I got better. Eleanor stood. That's the only choice that matters. When someone shows you that you're not what you thought you were, you can either get bitter or get better. The bitter ones never grow. The better ones become the warriors they always wanted to be. She extended her hand to Holloway. He stared at it for a long moment. Then slowly he took it. Eleanor pulled him to his feet. I'm sorry, he said. The words came out rough, like they'd been scraped from somewhere deep. For the mess hall, for all of it, I'm sorry. I know. I didn't understand. I know that too. I want to be better. Holloway's voice cracked. I don't know how, but I want to try. Eleanor nodded. That's a start. Garrett cleared his throat. Colonel Shaw, with respect, what happens now? The assessment is technically complete, but given what's just been revealed. What's been revealed doesn't change the results, Shaw said. Petty Officer Blackwood participated in this assessment under the same rules as everyone else. She earned her scores. They'll stand. And Corporal Holloway. Shaw looked at Holloway. Really looked. The way a commanding officer looks at a Marine, she's deciding whether to salvage or discard. Corporal Holloway will receive formal counseling for his assault on Petty Officer Blackwood in the mess hall, as well as for his conduct during today's combat assessment. Those incidents will be documented in his service record. Holloway nodded. He looked like a man accepting a sentence he knew he deserved. However, Shaw continued, the purpose of this assessment was evaluation and education, not punishment. If Corporal Holloway demonstrates genuine growth in the coming months, there may be opportunities for that record to be reviewed. Ma'am, Holloway's voice was steadier now. I want to request something. Go ahead. I want to attend the next Marine Raider assessment and selection. I've been talking about being a warrior my whole career, but I've never actually done anything to earn that title. I want to try. For real this time. Shaw raised an eyebrow. Raider selection has a 90% attrition rate, Corporal. Most candidates don't make it past the first week. I know, ma'am. And you want to attempt it anyway, after what's just happened here? Holloway looked at Eleanor. She told me I could get bitter. Or get better. I'm choosing better. Shaw was quiet for a moment. Then she nodded. I'll approve your request. But understand this, Corporal. If you wash out and come back to this command with the same attitude you had before, I will personally ensure you spend the rest of your career cleaning latrines at the worst duty station I can find. Understood, ma'am? Good. Shaw turned to address the assembled crowd. This assessment is officially concluded. Results will be posted tomorrow. Everyone is dismissed to recover and prepare for return to normal duties. The crowd began to disperse, but slowly, people kept looking back at Eleanor, at the trident still visible in her hand, at the dog tags she'd refastened around her neck using a length of paracord borrowed from Briggs. Martinez approached her hesitantly. Petty Officer, can I ask you something? Go ahead. In Somalia, during the siege, what was it like? Eleanor was quiet for a long moment. The question brought back images she'd spent 14 months trying to forget. The smell of cordite and blood. The sound of rounds cracking past her head. Marcus Webb's voice calm even as he bled out, telling her to get the hostages out, to not wait for him to finish the mission. It was the worst 3 days of my life, she said finally, and also the best. We saved 14 people who would have died without us. We lost 2 brothers who deserved to live. And we proved that when everything goes wrong, the only thing that matters is the person standing next to you. Martinez nodded slowly. Thank you for telling me, and for not killing Holloway when you had the chance. Eleanor almost smiled. He wasn't worth the paperwork. Martinez laughed. A surprised, genuine laugh, and walked away. Eleanor stood alone in the clearing as the crowd dispersed. The trident felt heavy in her hand, heavier than it had in months. She'd spent 14 months hiding what she was, pretending to be something smaller, weaker, less than the warrior she'd been trained to become. And now, everyone knew. The secret was out. The cover was blown. Whatever peace she'd hoped to find in anonymity was gone forever. But as she looked at the dog tags around her neck, as she remembered Marcus Webb's last words, "You're not done yet. Ghost." Not by a long shot. She realized that maybe peace wasn't what she needed. Maybe what she needed was purpose. And purpose, she was about to learn, had been looking for her too. The knock on Colonel Shaw's office door came at 0700 the next morning. Eleanor had been summoned by official message delivered by a runner who'd looked at her with a mixture of awe and uncertainty that she was already learning to recognize. "Enter," Shaw called. Eleanor stepped inside and came to attention. "Petty Officer 3rd Class Blackwood reporting as ordered, ma'am." At ease, closed the door. Eleanor closed the door and turned back to find Shaw studying her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Behind Shaw's desk, through the window, the morning sun cast long shadows across the base. "Sit down, Petty Officer." Eleanor sat. Shaw was quiet for a moment. Her fingers steepled in front of her face. Then she reached into her desk drawer and pulled out a folder. The cover was marked with classification stamps that made Eleanor's stomach tighten. "I received a call last night," Shaw said, "from Naval Special Warfare Command, specifically from Admiral Patricia Vance." Eleanor's breath caught. Admiral Vance was the commander of all SEAL operations, the highest-ranking officer in the community, the woman who had personally pinned Eleanor's trident on her chest 2 years ago. The Admiral was interested to learn that one of her operators had been involved in an incident at a Marine Corps base. She was particularly interested to learn that said operator had been assaulted by a Marine corporal and had chosen not to respond with force. Shaw's voice was neutral, but there was something underneath it. "Ma'am, I'm not finished." Shaw opened the folder. "Admiral Vance sent me your complete service record. Not the sanitized version I accessed 3 weeks ago. The real one. The one that details every operation you've participated in since you earned your trident." Eleanor said nothing. Her hands were steady in her lap, but her heart was pounding. 14 classified operations across 3 continents. Shaw read. Somalia, obviously, but also Syria, Djibouti, a location in Eastern Europe that's redacted so heavily I can't even determine which country it was in. Direct action support, tactical intelligence, combat casualty care. She looked up. And 17 confirmed kills in defensive engagements. The number hung in the air like smoke. 17, Shaw repeated. "You're 22 years old, and you've killed 17 people." "Yes, ma'am." "How do you sleep at night?" The question wasn't accusatory. It was genuine, curious. "Some nights I don't," Eleanor said quietly. "Some nights I see their faces. Some nights I hear Marcus and Andre telling me it's okay that we did what we had to do." She paused. "Most nights I just try to remember that every person I killed was trying to kill me or my teammates first." Shaw nodded slowly. "Admiral Vance told me something else. She told me that you're the most naturally talented operator she's seen in 30 years. That your instructors at Bodes said you moved like you've been doing this your whole life. That your team leader in Somalia, before he was killed in Ramadi, called you Ghost because you could disappear into any environment and emerge exactly where the enemy least expected you. Lieutenant Commander Brooks gave me that name," Eleanor said. "He was the best officer I ever served under. He's dead now." "Yes, ma'am." "And you blame yourself." Eleanor's jaw tightened. "I don't blame myself for his death. He died 8 months after Somalia, on a different operation, in a different country. I wasn't there." She swallowed hard. "But I wonder sometimes if I could have been. If I hadn't requested transfer. If I'd stayed with the team instead of running away. Is that what you think you did, ran away?" Eleanor didn't answer immediately. The question cut deeper than Shaw probably intended. "I told myself I was honoring Marcus and Andre's sacrifice," she said finally. "Told myself that finding peace was what they would have wanted. But the truth is," she stopped, swallowed. "The truth is I was afraid." "Of what?"
of becoming someone who didn't feel anything anymore, of turning into a weapon that couldn't turn off. Eleanor looked at her hands, scarred, calloused, capable of violence most people couldn't imagine. My father taught me that warriors protect. They don't just destroy.
But after Somalia, after everything I'd done and seen, I wasn't sure I remembered how to protect without destroying. So I ran. Shaw closed the folder, leaned back in her chair. Admiral Vance wants you back. Eleanor's head snapped up. What? She's offering you a position with a new unit. Female Integration Training Detachment. You'd be responsible for preparing the next generation of women for special operations selection and training, teaching them everything you know, helping them avoid the mistakes you made. I didn't make mistakes in the field. I'm not talking about the field. Shaw's voice softened. I'm talking about after. The running, the hiding, the pretending to be something smaller than you are.
She leaned forward. You're not the only female operator who's struggled with integration into a community that wasn't built for women. You're just the first one with enough experience to help others navigate it. Eleanor sat very still.
The offer was everything she should want. Purpose. Meaning. A chance to shape the future of women in special operations. But accepting it meant going back. Meant returning to a world she'd tried so hard to leave behind. I don't know if I can do that, she said. Can't or won't. Both. Either. Eleanor shook her head. Ma'am, I came to Pendleton to disappear. To find some kind of normal life. Teaching at a training unit isn't normal. It's just a different kind of operational. You're right, Shaw said. It is. But let me ask you something, Petty Officer. In the 14 months since you left your team, have you found the peace you were looking for? Eleanor didn't answer. Didn't need to. I didn't think so. Shaw stood and walked around her desk to stand in front of Eleanor. You know what I see when I look at you? I see a warrior who's been trying to be something else. And it's killing you. Not fast, not dramatically, but slowly, day by day. Every time you swallow an insult from someone like Holloway. Every time you pretend you're just a paper pusher. Every time you look in the mirror and see a stranger. Ma'am, I'm not finished. Shaw's voice hardened. You made a promise to your fallen teammates. A promise to find another way. But hiding isn't another way, Petty Officer. It's no way at all. Another way means using what they taught you to help others survive what you survived. Another way means standing up and showing the next generation what's possible. Eleanor felt something crack inside her chest. Something she'd been holding together with duct tape and denial for 14 months. I don't know how to teach, she said. Her voice sounded small, young, not like a decorated SEAL operator at all. I know how to operate, how to fight, how to survive. But teaching, that's different. Is it? Shaw raised an eyebrow. What did you do during the combat casualty care evolution when Holloway couldn't apply a tourniquet? I showed him how. In the tactical scenarios, when your team needed guidance, I explained what to do. That's teaching, Petty Officer. You've been doing it for 3 days, and from what Garrett tells me, you're damn good at it.
Eleanor blinked. She hadn't thought of it that way. Had been so focused on hiding her capabilities that she hadn't recognized when she was actually using them to help others improve. The offer stands, Shaw said. Admiral Vance will be here tomorrow to discuss the details personally. You have until then to decide. And if I say no, then you go back to your desk job. Push papers until your enlistment ends. Disappear into civilian life like you planned. Shaw's voice was matter of fact, but her eyes held something else, something like disappointment. It's your choice, Petty Officer. It always has been.
Before Eleanor could respond, there was a knock at the door. An aide stepped in. Ma'am, sorry to interrupt. There's a situation at the main gate. Shaw frowned. What kind of situation? A civilian woman. She's asking for Petty Officer Blackwood specifically. Says she's family. She's insistent. Eleanor's blood went cold. There was only one person who would come looking for her. One person who qualified as family, her mother. Catherine Blackwood had remarried 3 years after Garrett Blackwood died, moved to San Diego, started a new life with a man who sold insurance and had never held a weapon more dangerous than a golf club. She and Eleanor hadn't spoken in 18 months. Not since Eleanor had told her about earning the Trident, and Catherine had responded by screaming that Eleanor was throwing her life away, just like her father had. Petty Officer, Shaw's voice cut through Eleanor's paralysis. Do you want me to have her turned away? Eleanor stood. Her legs felt unsteady. No, ma'am. I'll handle it. Are you sure? No. Eleanor took a breath. But I need to do it anyway. She found her mother at the main gate, arguing with the MPs. Catherine was 51 now, her dark hair streaked with gray, her face lined with worry and anger and something else that Eleanor didn't want to examine too closely.
Eleanor. Catherine's voice cracked when she saw her daughter. Eleanor, thank God. Mom. Eleanor kept her voice neutral. What are you doing here? What am I doing here? Catherine stepped forward, arms raised like she wanted to embrace Eleanor, but didn't know if she was allowed. I saw the news. Someone leaked a video from that assessment. It's all over the internet. My daughter, my baby girl, being attacked by some Marine and then... Her voice broke. I saw what you did to him. I saw you almost break his arm. Eleanor's stomach dropped. Someone had recorded the fight. The aftermath. The revelation.
The secret wasn't just out at Camp Pendleton anymore. It was everywhere. I had to come, Catherine continued. Her hands were shaking. I had to see you, to make sure you were okay. She stopped, swallowed. To apologize. Apologize for what? For everything. Tears were streaming down Catherine's face now. For leaving your father. For marrying Richard. For not understanding why you enlisted. For screaming at you when you told me about the SEALs. She reached out and grabbed Eleanor's hands. I was so scared, Elle. So scared of losing you the way I lost Garrett. I thought if I pushed you away, if I was angry enough, maybe you'd quit. Maybe you'd come home and be safe. Mom, I watched that video 100 times. 100 times. I watched my daughter take down a man twice her size without even breathing hard. And I realized... Her voice dropped to a whisper. I realized I don't even know who you are anymore. My baby girl is a warrior. A real warrior. And I've been treating her like a child who made a bad decision. Eleanor felt her own eyes burning. She'd spent 18 months convincing herself that her mother's rejection didn't hurt, that she didn't need Catherine's approval, that she could be a SEAL and a daughter at the same time, even if her mother couldn't accept it. But standing here, watching Catherine cry, Eleanor realized how much she'd been lying to herself. I'm what Dad made me, Eleanor said quietly, what he trained me to be. I know you hated that part of him, the part that was always ready for violence, but that part saved lives, Mom. In Afghanistan, in Somalia, and at that assessment when that Marine attacked me, that part is the only reason I didn't kill him. I know. Catherine wiped her eyes. I know that now. I didn't before. I thought it. If you became like Garrett, you'd end up like Garrett. Dead in some desert, for a country that wouldn't even acknowledge your sacrifice. That might still happen. I know. Catherine's hands tightened on Eleanor's. But I'd rather spend whatever time we have being your mother than spend the rest of my life regretting that I pushed you away. Eleanor pulled her mother into a hug. It was awkward at first. They hadn't embraced in years. But then Catherine's arms came around her, and Eleanor felt something she hadn't felt since her father died. Home. I'm sorry, too, Eleanor whispered, for not calling, for not trying harder to make you understand, for shutting you out because it was easier than fighting. We're both stubborn, Catherine said into her shoulder. You get it from me. Garrett always said I was the most stubborn woman he'd ever met. Eleanor laughed. It felt strange. Good, but strange. He told me the same thing about himself. They stood there for a long moment, holding each other, while MPs pretended not to watch, and the California sun climbed higher in the sky. Finally, Catherine pulled back, looked at her daughter with new eyes. The video, she said. There's something else, something I need to tell you. What? The comments. Thousands of them. Millions of views. People are calling you a hero, Eleanor. They're saying you're proof that women belong in combat roles, that you're an inspiration. Eleanor's stomach tightened. I didn't do it to be an inspiration. I know, but you are one anyway. Catherine touched her daughter's face. There's also a woman, an admiral. She made a statement this morning, said something about a new training program, said she was hoping to recruit you. Admiral Vance had made a public statement. The offer wasn't just private anymore. It was official, on the record. The pressure to accept had just multiplied 1,000-fold. I don't know what to do, Eleanor admitted. I came here to disappear. Now I'm viral. Elle, Catherine's voice was gentle but firm. You were never going to disappear. Not really. Your father couldn't. I spent years trying to make him be something he wasn't, and it almost destroyed our marriage. Don't make my mistake. Don't fight what you are. What am I? You're Eleanor Blackwood, daughter of Garrett and Catherine, Navy SEAL, warrior. Catherine smiled through her tears. And apparently the most terrifying woman on the internet right now. Despite everything, Eleanor laughed again. Later that afternoon, another visitor arrived at Camp Pendleton. This one came by official helicopter, and the entire base seemed to hold its breath as Admiral Patricia Vance stepped onto the tarmac. She was 62 years old, with silver hair cut military short, and eyes that had seen more combat than most people could imagine. She'd been one of the first female Navy pilots. had commanded ships, had broken barriers in every assignment she'd ever held, and now she commanded every SEAL on the planet. "Petty Officer Blackwood," Vance said, as Eleanor came to attention. "At ease. We're not strangers. No, ma'am. You pinned my trident yourself. I told you then that you were special. I wasn't wrong. Thank you, ma'am. That wasn't a compliment." Vance's voice sharpened. It was a statement of fact, and facts come with responsibilities. She gestured for Eleanor to walk with her. They moved away from the helicopter, away from the aides and security personnel, until they were alone. "I'll be direct," Vance said. "I need you. Not want. Need. The female integration program is at a critical juncture. We've got 3 women who've passed Bud S, but retention is a problem. They're struggling with integration into teams that weren't designed for them. Struggling with a culture that doesn't know how to adapt. 2 of them are considering leaving the community entirely." "I didn't know that." "No. You've been too busy hiding to know." There was no judgment in Vance's voice. Just fact. "I understand why you ran. Somalia broke something in you. Brooks's death broke something else. But running doesn't fix what's broken. It just delays the pain." Eleanor looked at the ground, at her boots, at the shadows stretching across the tarmac. "What would you need me to do?" she asked. "Run the female integration training detachment. Prepare candidates for selection, mentor operators who've already passed, build a support structure that helps women succeed in a community that's still learning how to include them." "I'm 22 years old. I don't have the rank or the experience." "You have 17 kills and a Navy Cross citation sitting in a classified file. You have survival records that make veteran operators shake their heads in disbelief. And you have something no one else has. You're the first woman to actually do this job successfully. Not train for it. Do it." Eleanor looked up and met Vance's eyes. "And if I fail, then you fail, and we learn from it and try again." Vance's expression softened slightly. "Eleanor, I've been breaking barriers my entire career. You know what I've learned. The fear of failure is worse than failure itself. You can recover from failing. You can't recover from never trying. My father said something similar once. Your father was a good man. I served with him briefly, back when I was still flying and he was running maritime interdiction operations. He talked about you constantly, said you were going to change the world." Eleanor felt tears threatening, forced them back. "He died before he could see you earn your trident," Vance continued. "But I saw it. I saw his daughter accomplish something he only dreamed of. And I'm asking you, not asking to help other daughters accomplish the same thing." The weight of the decision pressed down on Eleanor like a physical force. She thought about her mother's words, about Shaw's challenge, about Marcus Webb and Andre Thompson, and the promise she'd made in that Mogadishu compound, while bullets cracked overhead and everything seemed lost. She thought about Brooks bleeding out in Ramadi, telling her not to give up. She thought about Holloway, broken and humiliated, asking how to be better. And she thought about all the young women out there who wanted to serve their country the way she had, who had the talent and the drive and the courage, but lacked someone to show them the way. "Yes," Eleanor said. Vance's eyebrows rose. "Yes. Yes, ma'am, I'll do it. I'll run the detachment. I'll train the candidates. I'll help build something that lasts." Vance smiled. It transformed her face, made her look younger, softer. "Welcome back, Ghost." "Thank you, ma'am." "Don't thank me yet." Vance's smile turned sharp. "The first class arrives in 3 weeks. 30 female candidates from all branches. Most of them have never experienced anything close to what you've been through. Your job is to prepare them for the worst and hope for the best. Understood?" And Eleanor. Vance put a hand on her shoulder. "Your father would be proud, not because you're a SEAL, because you're choosing to help others become one too. That's what warriors do. They build the next generation." Eleanor touched the dog tags under her shirt. Marcus, Andre, her father's trident that she'd worn since his funeral. "I know," she said. For the first time in 14 months, she actually believed it. 6 months passed faster than Eleanor expected. 6 months of building a training program from the ground up, of developing curriculum and recruiting instructors, of arguing with bureaucrats who didn't understand why a 22-year-old petty officer was being given command of anything. 6 months of proving herself all over again. But now, standing in the graduation ceremony at Naval Amphibious Base, Coronado, Eleanor understood that those 6 months had been worth it. 8 women stood before her in dress uniforms. They'd started as 30. 22 had quit or been eliminated. But these 8 had survived everything Eleanor and her staff had thrown at them. Hell Week, combat training, the gauntlet. And now, they were ready for buds. Admiral Vance stood at the podium. Today we celebrate the completion of Phase 1 of the Female Integration Training Program. 8 women have proven they have the physical capability, mental fortitude, and moral courage to attempt Bud S selection. Not all of them will succeed. Statistics suggest that perhaps 2 or 3 will earn their trident, but today isn't about statistics. Today is about possibility. She gestured to Eleanor. Eleanor stepped forward, looked at the 8 graduates, at their families filling the seats behind them. Her mother sat in the front row, tears already streaming down her face. 6 weeks ago, Eleanor began. You walked into a training bay, and I asked you why you wanted to become SEALs. Some of you wanted to honor fallen family members. Some wanted to prove something to the world. Some simply wanted to serve at the highest level possible. She paused. I'm not going to tell you that your reasons don't matter. They do. They'll be the only thing keeping you going when Bud tries to break you. But I want to add something to those reasons. Eleanor reached under her shirt and pulled out the dog tags. These belonged to Petty Officer Marcus Webb and Chief Petty Officer Andre Thompson. They died in Somalia, covering my extraction. They were the best operators I've ever known, and they believed in something bigger than themselves. She held the tags up. They believed that the job of a warrior isn't just to fight. It's to protect, to serve, to sacrifice so that others don't have to. They believed that strength without purpose is just violence, and violence without discipline is just chaos. Eleanor looked at each graduate in turn. When you go to Buds, you're not just representing yourselves. You're representing every woman who will come after you, every girl who watches you succeed and thinks maybe I can do that too, every mother who worries about her daughter and needs to see that women can be warriors without losing what makes them women. She tucked the dog tags back. I didn't understand that when I first earned my trident. I thought the achievement was personal, private, just between me and the instructors who tried to break me. But it wasn't. It was never just about me. Eleanor stepped back and came to attention. Class 1 of the Female Integration Training Program. You are dismissed to Bud ES. Make us proud. The graduates broke formation. Families rushed forward. Embraces and tears and laughter filled the air. One of the graduates, Sergeant Temperance Winters, the woman who'd reminded Eleanor so much of herself, approached before joining her own family. Thank you, ma'am, for everything. You haven't earned your trident yet, Winters. I know, Winters smiled, but I will. And when I do, I'm going to come back here and help you train the next class, the way you trained me. Eleanor felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. I'll hold you to that. Winters nodded, then went to embrace her mother. Eleanor's own mother appeared at her side, took her daughter's hand. Your father would be so proud, Catherine said. Not because you're a SEAL, because you're helping others become one. I know, Mom. He always said the best warriors weren't the ones who won the most fights. They were the ones who created the most warriors. He told me that too. Eleanor squeezed her mother's hand. I'm just now starting to understand what it meant. They stood together, watching the celebration unfold around them. And Eleanor realized that this right here, right now, was what Marcus Webb had been talking about in his final moments. What Andre Thompson had made her promise. This was the other way, not hiding from what she was, but using what she was to build something bigger than herself. A legacy that would outlive her, that would continue long after she was gone. In a mess hall at Camp Pendleton, a man had once hit a woman he thought was weak. He'd learned the truth when her badge fell out and his world shattered. But the real lesson wasn't about strength or violence or who could beat whom in a fight. The real lesson was about what comes after, what you build, who you help, how you turn your own pain into someone else's possibility. Eleanor Blackwood had learned that lesson the hard way. Now she was teaching it to everyone willing to listen. And that more than any trident or medal or promotion was what made her a warrior. Because true warriors don't just win battles. They create the next generation of warriors who will win the battles yet to come. That was her father's legacy. That was Marcus and Andre's sacrifice. And that was Eleanor Blackwood's choice. Every single day, for the rest of her life.